The crack nobody hardly didn't hear the ship break. There was no explosion, no warning siren, no enemy submarine in sight. At 2:17 a.m., somewhere in the North Atlantic, the steel hull of a brand new American cargo ship split open like wet paper. The sea rushed in, the lights went out, and in less than 7 minutes, the ship folded in half and disappeared into black water. By morning, the Navy would blame the weather. By the end of the war, nearly 3,000 ships would be lost the same way, and one engineer no one listened to would realize the war wasn't sinking ships. Steel was. Before we begin, listen closely because this is not the story you think you know. Stay with me until the end, because the smallest detail in this story saved more lives than entire fleets. 1941. America builds too fast. When the United States entered World War II, speed became law. The Atlantic was a killing field. German U-boats were tearing through Allied shipping lanes faster than shipyards could replace losses. Britain was starving, the Soviet Union was bleeding, and America responded the only way it knew how. Build faster, bigger, cheaper shipyards that once built a vessel in months were now ordered to do it in weeks. The Liberty ship was the answer. Simple, boxy, ugly, and efficient. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't fast, but it could be built anywhere, by anyone, in record time. Welders replaced riveters, assembly lines replaced craftsmanship. Ships were launched before the paint was dry. Politicians called it genius, admirals called it salvation. One man quietly called it a mistake. The man who counted fractures' name was Elias Ward. He wasn't famous, he didn't command troops, he never fired a weapon in anger. Elias Ward counted failures. At a naval materials laboratory on the East Coast, Ward examined broken steel pulled from wrecks. He wasn't interested in torpedoes or enemy tactics. He studied cracks, tiny ones, the kind nobody thought mattered. He noticed something strange. Ships weren't failing where bombs hit. They were failing where nothing hit at all. Hairline fractures ran along weld seams like scars. Perfectly straight, perfectly silent. Ward began collecting reports. Cold weather sinkings, calm seas, no enemy contact. Ships breaking apart as if snapped by invisible hands. When he presented his findings, the room went quiet. Then someone laughed. Steel doesn't just snap. Senior engineers dismissed him. Steel had been used for decades. Ships survived storms, collisions, explosions. The idea that steel hulls were spontaneously breaking apart sounded ridiculous. Ward was told the losses were due to poor crews, poor maintenance, bad luck. One admiral leaned back and said, "If your theory were true, half our fleet would be cracking open." Ward didn't argue. He already suspected the number was higher. The winter that proved him right in early 1942 winter hit the North Atlantic hard. Within weeks, reports flooded in. Liberty ships snapping near Greenland, tankers splitting off Nova Scotia, crews abandoning ships that were sinking without a single hole from enemy fire. The pattern was undeniable. Cold temperatures, heavy seas, fully loaded hulls. Steel was becoming brittle. Welding faster than riveting had removed flexibility from the hulls. Stress had nowhere to go. It didn't bend. It fractured. Ward realized the terrifying truth. America was mass-producing a design flaw. The crazy idea Ward proposed something no one expected. Not thicker steel, not stronger welds, not slower production. He suggested cutting intentional cracks into ships. Controlled fractures. Steel stop points designed to halt a spreading crack before it could tear the hull apart. The room exploded, deliberately weakening ships in wartime was madness. One officer called it sabotage. Another asked if Ward understood what war meant. Ward simply replied, "I understand what steel does under stress." The test they didn't want. Reluctantly, the Navy allowed a single test. One damaged ship, one modification, one chance. Ward's team installed rounded cutouts at critical stress points, corners of hatches, deck openings, welded seams, places where cracks loved to start. The ship was sent back into brutal conditions. Weeks passed, then months. No fracture. Another ship was modified. Then 10. Sinking slowed. Then stopped quietly, without announcements. Shipyards began altering designs. The war didn't pause, but the ship stopped snapping. The cost of being right too late. Ward never celebrated. He knew how many ships had already been lost. How many sailors had vanished into freezing seas because no one wanted to believe steel could fail this way. His idea saved thousands, but it could have saved more. When the war ended, there were no medals for METALURGISTS. No parades for engineers, just a silent acknowledgement buried in technical manuals. A small change, a massive impact. The silence that saved the future be the time Elias Ward's idea proved itself. The war had already moved on. New fronts opened, new weapons appeared, new heroes filled the headlines, and yet, across the oceans, something invisible had changed. Ships still sailed into storms, still crossed freezing waters, still carried tanks, fuel, food, and men into danger, but they no longer snapped in half. No announcement was made. No press release followed. The Navy didn't want panic. Shipyards didn't want delays. Politicians didn't want questions. So the fix was applied quietly. And the silence became policy. The fix that couldn't be explained. Word solution spread faster than his name ever would. Rounded hatch corners replaced sharp angles. Crack arresters were added to decks. Welding patterns were altered not to look stronger, but to behave smarter. Every change looked minor. Together, they rewrote how steel structures survived stress. The irony was painful. The faster America had rushed to build, the closer it had come to destroying itself from the inside. Ward submitted report after report, each more detailed than the last. Most were stamped, filed, and forgotten. One Navy official finally told him the truth. "Your work is too technical for history books," he said, "and too embarrassing for speeches. The war ends. The lesson does not when Germany surrendered." In 1945, shipyards slowed. Liberty ships rusted in harbors. Some were sold, some were scrapped, some quietly sank during peacetime service. But Ward stayed, because he realized the problem was bigger than ships. Steel bridges, oil rigs, rail cars, skyscrapers. They were all being built faster now. Welded more, riveted less, pushed harder. The same mistake was spreading again. The disaster that almost repeated history in the early 1950s. A new structure began showing strange failures. A suspension bridge, modern, elegant, welded, almost entirely developed cracks. During cold weather, engineers blamed traffic, wind, vibration. Ward didn't. He saw the same fracture patterns, the same brittle behavior, the same arrogance. He warned them. Again, he was ignored. Until a section collapsed during a winter night. No enemy, no explosion, just steel giving up. This time, the report didn't disappear. Because now, Ward's wartime data existed, and it explained everything. Why nitrogen monoxide. One talks about him. Ward never became famous for one simple reason. His story had no villain. No enemy general, no battlefield drama, no single moment of glory. Just math, stress, temperature, time, and a truth nobody liked admitting. Technology can fail even when intentions are good. Especially then. Governments prefer stories where failure comes from the outside. Ward proved it often comes from within. The men who never knew his name. Thousands of sailors lived because of a design detail they never saw. They cursed storms. They feared submarines. They trusted steel. They never knew that somewhere inside their ship were invisible scars, intentional weaknesses, designed to save them. That the strength of their vessel came from admitting it could break. Ward once wrote a line in his notebook that was never published. "The strongest structure is not the one that resists damage, but the one that knows how to stop it." The final iron at Tode. Every major steel structure on Earth uses Ward's idea. Crack arresters, stress relief points, controlled failure pods. They are standard, mandatory, so normal that no one asks why they exist. The world learned the lesson, but forgot the man, and maybe that's fitting, because Elias Ward never wanted recognition. He wanted ships to come home. Final note: World War II wasn't won only by courage and firepower. It was won by people who noticed what everyone else ignored. People who understood that survival isn't about being unbreakable, it's about knowing exactly how, where, and when to bend. And sometimes, the idea that sounds the craziest is the one that keeps the world from splitting in half. The legacy of Elias Ward. After the war ended, the world moved on. Headlines celebrated generals in battles, cities rebuilt, ships rusted quietly in harbors, their crews long returned home. But somewhere deep in the steel of every Liberty ship, every hull Ward had touched, the silent proof of his work remained. Ships no longer snapped in half because someone had noticed what no one else had. Ward did not retire. He stayed in laboratories and shipyards, watching quietly. The problem he had solved in wartime was only a fraction of what could fail in peacetime. Bridges, skyscrapers, oil rigs, all were now being welded faster, stronger, taller, the same. Pressures that had almost destroyed ships threatened to repeat themselves. Ward knew that if engineers ignored history, disaster would strike again. In 1949, he received a call about a new suspension bridge under construction in a northern city. Engineers were reporting unexplained stress fractures, traffic, wind, vibration. They claimed these were normal. Ward went to the site. He walked along steel beams, running his hands over welds, inspecting the way the cold had attacked the metal. He recognized the patterns immediately. Brittle fractures, cracks growing where no load should have broken steel. It was the same behavior, decades too late, in a different structure. He warned the engineers. He wrote memos, gave demonstrations, and marked diagrams with the same meticulous care he had during the war. Many shrugged him off. After all, he wasn't a famous general. He had no army behind him. Yet the warning went mostly unheeded then. One winter night, part of the bridge collapsed. No explosion, no enemy, just steel failing silently, as it always had in the Atlantic decades earlier. Ward's wartime research became critical. His data explained the failure and prevented more sections from collapsing. Without it, hundreds of lives could have been lost. Ward never sought fame. He never appeared on magazine covers or received medals. The world he saved often forgot his name. Engineers applied his principles quietly, subtly. Crack arresters, stress relief points, controlled failure pots became standard in steel design worldwide. They are everywhere now: bridges, ships, skyscrapers, but so normalized that no one thinks twice about their existence. He watched it all with quiet satisfaction. The strongest structures were no longer the ones that resisted damage, but the ones that knew how to fail safely. The lesson of bending before breaking had spread across oceans and decades. Invisible yet indispensable. In his final years, Ward walked along the docks where Liberty ships still rested in silence. He looked out over the water, remembering the young sailors he had never met, the hundreds of lives saved by a detail no one noticed. Ships that could have shattered in storms remained whole. Lives once at risk were now preserved, and yet, almost, no one knew why. The strongest structure, he had written in a notebook never published, is not the one that resists damage, but the one that knows how to stop it. World War II had been won not only by courage or firepower, but by people who noticed the invisible threats, people who understood that survival was not about invincibility, but awareness of steel, of stress, of the small cracks no one else could see. Ward had been one of them. His crazy idea had saved thousands at sea and reshaped the world quietly, invisibly, perfectly. As the sun set over the Atlantic, he turned away from the harbor, leaving the ships to the water, the cranes to the wind, and the world to the structures he had safeguarded. Recognition was unnecessary. Survival was the reward, and in that silence, the world remained unbroken.